Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to our podcast channel. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. And this podcast is all about voting. We're encouraging everyone to go out and vote. We talk about our experience with voting, and we provide some links in the description. So if you actually just don't even want to listen to this podcast, just check out the links in the description. Go vote. But if you do want to listen to the podcast, it would make us really happy. So like this video, subscribe, comment, vote, do it all. Here's the podcast.
You remember what it was like the first time you voted? Where were you?
Yeah, of course. I was in college. I was in Santa Cruz, which is like, fun place to be and vote because it's just like it's such a small community. It's like a cool little surf town.
But also very politically charged.
Very politically charged on the left side of the spectrum. And Obama was running. And so, like, of course, like being a college kid when Obama was running, I was a freshman in college, it was super exciting because, like, I mean, the kind of energy around that election was crazy. It was like a national, at least, again, we were in California, so I don't know what it felt like in other places. And specifically, I was in Santa Cruz. So it felt like this, like everyone was coming together and it was like a celebration. And I remember going to vote and everything was so like fun and happy. And like the people who worked at the poll were very like, oh, like it's your first time voting. They were so excited. And it was just like, our teachers were talking about it, our professors were talking about it in college. And it was just like a very fun, exciting moment. I just remember it being super cool. And then that night, I remember it being like as if we had won the World Cup. Like it was
totally.
Like the streets were going wild.
In Boulder, Colorado, and we were on Pearl Street, which is the main street. I had American flag suspenders, the I voted sticker on my shirt, and I was carrying an American flag. And we were waiting for the stoplights to turn red, and then we would all run into the middle of the street and basically have an impromptu parade celebration because we were so excited.
Right.
But it was interesting. I remember like voting for the first time back then. I didn't feel like I was voting out of fear of the alternative getting voted in, of what I wanted. I mean, I voted for Barack Obama. I was super excited to vote for him, very proud to vote for him, but I was not voting for him out of fear of the alternative case happening necessarily. For me, it just felt like an exciting, prideful moment. Didn't wait in long lines. Everyone was excited for me to vote.
Yeah, and I think I want to keep the subject matter around the excitement around voting because, of course, like right now is an incredibly divisive time in the US and like more so than ever. And I think what you're right about is that I don't recall it ever being like that, ever being that intense. But I think the excitement level that I want to talk about is the excitement level around voting, and not necessarily the particular candidate, because I feel that voting is a very special thing that we get to do as Americans, and that we actually, like, our voice actually matters. That's exciting. Now, I also want to be respectful of whoever you want to vote for, because the reality is that's also a part of the special nature is you get to choose. But I agree with you in that there's a lot of fear now in the voting process, even of like showing up to the polls. Whereas the first time I voted, showing up to the polls, like I was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing a mail-in ballot. I'm showing up to the poll. I'm walking in there. I'm like, I'm an American. It's my first time I get to vote. I'm like a part of this community. And there was a lot of messaging about how exciting that was to be 18 years old and finally be able to vote.
Yeah, and I think now, no matter who you're voting for, whichever side, there is sort of like fear around the process. Yeah. And what I would love to instill is that I hope that generations that are now voting for the first time still feel and have that sense of like pride in voting, because I feel like it was important for me to feel that way in my first time voting, and it has carried me through. And it's a lot of the reason why I like will always continue to vote and be invested in the process. For me, like to be an American is like one, accepting and acknowledging and doing the research to understand what are the faults of this country. And then two, trying to be part of the solution. Like for me, that's what it means to be a part of America, like to be an American. If I'm going to be here paying taxes, I'm a citizen of this country. It's like acknowledge the faults, try and understand what the faults are, and then try and be a part of the solution.
Yeah, I think when I was younger than 18, I was like, there's a couple people, or there's a crop of people who vote and they kind of make the decision for everyone. And like, what's what's the difference if I vote or not? And once I turned 18, especially because we were a part of such a big election, I remember being like, oh, wow, it really matters. It really matters to vote. And I think that's what I want to get across to everyone who is in the US and is of age of voting is like, it really does matter. And it's a very powerful thing that we get to do. The fact that we do get to have our voices heard through casting a ballot is like, it's super dynamic. And I think a lot of that was contextualized and became aspirational when we were younger through, at least for me, like rock stars saying that it was cool to vote through this program on MTV called Rock the Vote. And Rock the Vote still exists. It's like a big initiative, but they had like a Rock the Vote concert and it was all these cool musicians playing. And then after they played their songs, they would be like, vote, like power to the people. We're all going to vote. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. Rock stars do it. I'm in. And I think the modern version of that is now creators. Creators are the people who are like, guys, it's cool. It's super cool to vote. It's super powerful to vote. And like, we all have a voice in this and it matters. It matters to vote. I think, of course, we've talked about this on the pod before, but it is pretty significant that the biggest voter registration event ever in the US is now credited to David Dobrik.
Yeah, he registered 120,000 people to vote with his Tesla giveaway in partnership with Headcount.
That is so many people. Also, it kind of sheds light on how many people weren't registered to vote. Like that many people, like to me, I'm like, wow, are people not registered to vote? That's amazing.
Yeah. And you think about, 120,000 people, Kylie Jenner registered another 80,000 people. There were 3 states in 2016 that had margins that spanned, I think it was like 109,000 votes or something like that. I read a statistic from the census website. Like some of these states come down to hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands. Like those are the types of margins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's super dynamic. Like I think, I don't know if you still can register to vote because we're under 30 days, but I would still check out your registration if you're unsure. And we'll put a link in the description of this podcast to check it out. But I would just urge you to recognize like like Colin's saying, the margins are slim, every vote matters. And outside of that is like your opinion on the future of the country. Like it actually is heard and matters. And again, it's one of the cool things about being a part of the United States. And I say that in a certain tone because I am the first in my family who's like born and raised an American. And that's pretty different. And it contextualizes a lot of things for me because, my parents who were brought up in India, like their thought process was that there was something different in the US and something better, quote unquote, for them at the time. And that means for our family. And now I am married to an American. I will have American kids most likely, and my lineage will now be American. And so I'm kind of the first one to be here and be American. And so I have a lot of care about what the future of this looks like because I'm the first one. I'm starting the like, okay, now my family will be American.
Yeah.
That's not, like, I don't know. It's such an interesting emotion. I think maybe other immigrant kids can kind of connect to that of like, oh, now it's my choice that I'm going to stay here instead of, again, my parents in their 20s and 30s left.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. I think about being American in terms of making that choice too, of like, all right, if you're going to stay here and be a part of the system, be a part of the process, it's important to think about what that means to you to be here, to take part in it. And for me, again, it comes down to acknowledging the problems, trying to understand the problems, and then trying to be part of the solution. And like being a part of the solution, the first thing I know that actually makes an impact is voting.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the problems is not enough people voting and not, to not get a big enough representation of like a certain voice. And so I think that's what's important now is just as we get closer to the election, like we're going to make a video on our main YouTube channel about voting. But I think just raising the awareness of like, hey guys, like it matters. Like we're all here, we're all in it together. And it's important to have everyone's voice heard.
Yeah, and you're not voting for what the world looks like right now, for what the country looks like. You're voting for what you want it to look like in the future. And what's interesting for us, you mentioned David Dobrik. As creators, our audience, although much smaller, is a similar type of demographic to his. Like, we looked at our metrics, and it's primarily 18 to 35-year-olds. Like 70% of our audience are in that range of 18 to 35, and the majority of our audience are in the United States. Like, in the last 365 days, 2 million plus of our views came from the United States. And then second to that is India with 500,000.
Shout out India.
Shout out to our Indian viewers. But, for us, like, we want to talk about it because we do have the majority of our audience are of the voting age now. And a lot of them are first-time voters. And Gen Z and millennials make up 37% of the potential electorate in 2020.
Do you remember, of course you do, because we have a video of it, but like, do you remember the feeling 4 years ago? You and I spent the whole day together on election day 4 years ago. And we voted, but then we also went out to the polls and like filmed just the vibe and like talked to people and checked out what they felt. And like, it was a really interesting day in LA.
Yeah, we traveled all over. We went to West Hollywood. We went to UCLA. We went downtown. It was really, really fascinating. And we just drove around, filmed people, talked to people, and listened to the radio.
Yeah, and I agree that even 4 years ago, there's like a palpable like excitement in the air around like doing your duty and like being a citizen and going out to vote. That of course with like we have like a mixture of different reasons why that excitement is absent this year, both because of the pandemic where like you can't actually comfortably like go to a poll and like,
yeah.
I mean, seeing the news that people are waiting like 7 hours in line. Like there was a dude who talked about, I think it was on John Oliver. He talked about like watching an entire season of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, he waited almost 8 hours to vote.
That's crazy. Like that is wild. And I think the messaging around voting right now is just kind of tense. Of course, it's like just tense for so many different reasons.
Yeah.
But I think we just want to encourage you to do it, like find a way, because it is really important. And
there is an Instagram handle, I am a voter, that we'll link in the description, and you can go through one of their story highlights and it will tell you all the information you need to know per state. Like when you need to register by. That's obviously cool. Like we're getting very close.
Yeah.
But if you're watching this now, you can go to that Instagram handle.
I actually did it just straight through Instagram. When you open up Instagram right now, it says like, hey, check if you're registered to vote and like see where your polling place is. So
same.
Like, super cool of Instagram to do that. So that's how I did it. I clicked through there and actually had to change my address and update it. And I did that. And it was like, oh, thank you, Instagram. Super cool.
Yeah.
And so for us, like the point of this podcast and the YouTube video we're going to make is just to give you the information and encourage you to do it. And then give you the links in this description to like actually take an action and make sure that you're all set up, make sure you actually go do it. It's really important. I remember last year, like just seeing the faces of people coming out of the polls, like was super cool. Cause there were like, so many people were excited. They were
last time you mean?
Yeah. 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Yeah. Like people were just so excited. And like, so, again, it was like a communal activity that the whole nation experiences. And what's interesting is now like the nation is we're all kind of experiencing the same thing, like with this pandemic now of just having to deal with so much stuff. Like there's like all these like negative communal experiences.
Yeah. And when it comes to voting now, you just have to be more on top of it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to be doing mail-in voting.
Yeah.
Like I'm tracking my ballot right now and like waiting for it to arrive. And then there's all types of rules to make sure that your mail-in ballot gets accepted, right down to like the color of the pen that you use, how much your signature matches the signature that the DMV has on record.
That's so stressful.
Yeah.
That's so stressful.
There's just a lot of things to take into account.
Yeah. I think I'm going to drop mine off at a polling place on
you were saying
because I don't want to not go to a polling place. Like
are you going to have to wait in line like anybody else?
I don't know. I think, I don't know. I have to look into that. So probably put one of the links once I find out in the description here. But I'd like to do that because I just don't, like, I don't know. If you throw it in a mailbox, that just feels like, I don't know, scary to me. Like I want to hand it to someone and make sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll probably put it in the mail, but then I'm just going to track it. I have like a ballot tracker that sends me updates to my email right now.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, thanks for listening. We urge you all to vote. It's coming up. Just make sure you know all your information. You know what steps you need to take, and you're really clear. Like Colin just said, there's like a certain type of pen you need to use if you're doing a mail-in ballot. There's like all kinds of things that you just need to be really attentive of. And voting is not only cool, but it's like it's the special thing about being an American, and it's in all of our hands. And so that's what's really important for us. So we want to encourage you guys to vote, to check out the links in the description, and to maybe comment on one of our videos or comment on our Instagram on the day. Maybe on the 3rd, what we'll do is like put up something about voting and just have everyone like put an emoji or something to just say that they voted, so that it feels like more of a community. Because I think that's what's really cool about it. It's like we're all in it together. We're all a part of this. So vote, 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 vote. Links in the description. Vote.
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 Just vote.
All right.